Thank you very much for finding your way into the auditorium where we're going to be discussing, as the title already implies, the connection between the protection and restoration of natural ecosystems to our global consumption of raw materials. I think these 2 days have been really inspiring in shaking us up how not only marveling, but basically existentially important natural ecosystems are, and I'm very happy that we can take this opportunity now to make the connection to raw materials. I don't know whom amongst you have been to DLD Circular last year. Any? Excellent. Okay, so some experts already on board and some new faces. That is great. That's exactly the connection we want to make right now. In the past 6 years, humanity has consumed 580 billion tons of raw materials globally, exceeding the threshold of 100 billion tons per year, logically, whilst in the entire 20th century we've consumed 740 billion tons. So that exemplifies how tremendously our consumption of raw materials has accelerated, and that, given, as I mentioned before on the main stage, given the fact that 90% of biodiversity loss eventually is linked to the way, or at least to the unsustainable way, how we extract and process natural resources. Also 45% of greenhouse gas emissions, by the way. So we have a tremendous lever in the way we deal with resources and in more intelligently preserving the resources we have. Circularity, just to recap that for anyone who's new to the topic, has basically 3 approaches to resource consumption, which is narrowing the loop, being more resource efficient, the classic notion that we've known for decades, lightweighting and so on. What comes with it is slowing the loop, that is increasing the lifetime of products, but also increasing the utility of products during that lifetime. That can be sharing, that can be other ways to make sure that a product is used as much as possible for the purpose it was created. And then, of course, eventually any product will come to its end of life. The challenge is to close the loop and make sure that those resources don't go to waste, neither the raw materials themselves, maybe even the components or entire products, and actually that we can go into, yes, recycling, but also remanufacturing, refurbishment, all the different strategies that help us capture the value that is bound in products. So on the one hand, technological progress has been fueling that resource consumption that we see globally, and on the other hand, technology and our industry can also be and has to be part of the solution to make a change, and that is exactly what we're going to be discussing on this panel. So how industry affects natural ecosystems, how transforming to a circular economy can work, and what that entails on a product, on an engineering level, on a company level, on a business model side, also for entire value chains. And of course, we also want to understand how today's frontrunners, some of whom are with us today, already lead the way. So it's my great pleasure to welcome an exciting panel of personalities up here on stage with me. Bachus, who is co-founder of ExoMatter, an AI-based materials engineering startup, which we're going to be learning more about later on. Then we have Alexis, who's been a long-standing chief sustainability officer at Arcadis, a Dutch infrastructure and engineering company, and at Adidas as director of sustainability previously to that. Then we have the CTO of MAN, Frederik Zohm, with us, and Michail Ginsburg of OutNature, a startup in the field of bio-based materials, a corporate startup actually, so that is specificum to you guys of PreZero, and I'm very excited to have all of you here. Thank you so much for being with us. And my name is Niclas-Alexander Mauss. I'm one of the co-founders of Circular Republic. We are a part of Unternehmertum. I don't know whom of you heard Helmut Schönberger speaking this morning, the CEO of Unternehmertum, the founder who basically built up this entire innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem from which all these startups involve, and a lot of corporate innovation, of course, as well, especially at the interface between those 2 worlds. And with Circular Republic, we are the special unit, you can say, or the department that pushes the transformation to a circular economy, which after all, in the first place, maybe is a matter of awareness and understanding throughout industry and society, but even for those who have understood, it's a matter of execution, and that is where things get tricky, as we know, and that is also something we're going to be discussing later on. We'll look into this later, I think. First of all, I'd like to ask Alexis, before we sort of step into the nitty-gritty details about the big picture. So maybe we all know, Alexis, that global resource consumption and the according extraction and processing of raw materials harms or can harm natural ecosystems. But can you elaborate a bit on how resource depletion and biodiversity loss interact and what the most relevant material streams we have out there?
Sure. Lovely to meet you all. I'm supposed to be talking about two different sectors. So first, apparel, footwear, and consumer goods, that side, but also more recently, looking from the infrastructure side. And I want to be quite clear that, and no matter what sector you are in, and there will always be impact no matter what materials we have. The difference is there is going to be undoubtedly most restorative capability that we have in shifting to this new economy, this net zero economy, this more regenerative economy. I can give a couple of examples. First, maybe from the infrastructure space or buildings space. There is a huge growth right now in actually building skyscrapers, building large multi-story buildings from things like mass timber. So actually regrowing the right kind of forests, and actually this sector, which is at, I want to keep my figures straight, which is already at about 900 million now, is growing at a CAGR of 6% year on year. And so we actually are starting to see people use more natural materials as a way of both expanding out more home for biodiversity, as well as start to restore the nature itself through doing the buildings. For example, there is quite a bit of not only low carbon concrete, but now innovations in terms of zero carbon and negative carbon concrete that are coming out and being used in buildings across projects that I have seen. So also, one thing that is important to note is that we tend to talk, when we're talking about the impacts of the new materials that we're using and the concerns about, for example, mining metals for batteries. What tends to get forgotten in that is it's a fundamental shift in the economy from a linear economy to a circular economy. Right now, actually, even if we were to use those mined materials only once, the fossil fuel economy right now is 535 times more impactful in its mining practices than what we will even need to run this new economy based on the metals and the materials that we will need for the transition. That being said, however, it won't be that kind of economy. We recycle batteries at way over 90%. It's above 95% and getting much closer to 100% of recycling of the materials out there. And so once those are taken out of ecosystems in the right way, with the right precautions in place, those go into loops that continuously exist. So no matter that our economies grow, we're not continuing to grow the impacts overall because we've already established a base of materials that we can keep working on. I don't want to give too many stats and stuff at the beginning, but maybe just to sort of wrap, also in touching on the other sector. So in terms of apparel and footwear, and consumer goods in general, a lot of times what we are looking at there is materials that can oftentimes be seen as damaging for the environment. If you're growing cotton, for example, then you would need to use quite a lot of pesticides to grow it in a conventional way. New regenerative agriculture and techniques are using materials not only like cotton, but also things like wool, and using regenerative agriculture practices to actually restore the areas in which those materials are grown. Now, the most important thing that is going to happen in that space, and is still an area of innovation. So I cannot, tell you that the problem is fully solved, but is to actually turn those materials into fully closed loop materials themselves. Natural materials don't always equate to less impactful materials, depending on how much we can actually put these materials in loops. We need to have both technical loops for some of these synthetic materials, as well as natural loops. And there's been quite a few innovations in that space in terms of startups being able to chemically recycle polyester and being able to reprocess cotton and turn it into like new. Considering there's 90 million tons of textile waste per year right now, and it's expected to grow to 130 in just a decade's time, we're going to need that scale up of innovation if we're not going to create such a growth in textile waste and general consumer goods waste overall.
Yeah, that makes a nice connection, I believe, to the large questions we've been discussing, to the very down-to-earth challenges we have in the respective industries. We have apparel or textiles overall of the construction sector. Now MAN is part of another extremely relevant industry, the automotive industry, one of the global leaders in commercial vehicles. Frederik, we've been working with MAN and Circular Republic on the battery value chain, but surely there's much more to it. What is your approach to circularity as a commercial vehicle manufacturer?
Yeah, thanks first of all for invitation, and also warm welcome from my side. So to give you a little bit of background how and why we teamed up with Circular Republic, and how did we then come also to some solutions you mentioned. So we are a commercial vehicle manufacturer, so around about 80% of all goods in Europe are transported on the road, and that hasn't changed ever since. And also we consume more, it always stays with this 80%, perhaps even is increasing. Everything here in the room touched a truck at least 3 to 4 times. So we are quite relevant in getting the things done, but we are quite relevant also for CO2 emission, because a truck by itself consumes on 100 kilometers around about 20 to 30 liters of diesel and runs 100,000 kilometers. So each truck produces 3 million liters or consumes 3 million liters of diesel per year, and we have a truck industry in Europe around about 360,000 trucks per year. So you see the size of the problem we're creating by transportation. So for us at MAN, that means that we produce round about 170 million tons of CO2 equivalent by trucks in use per year. That's close to the Netherlands on the full pollution. So we fully understood we are part of the problem. And I think Rockström had showed it. So we needed to tackle that topic about decarbonization, because also we as a team, as MAN team, we wanted to be part of a company who is not producing pollution, but who brings solutions. So we developed our topics, and our solution are battery electric trucks. As we speak, so on Monday in Hanover, our big show will start, and then we will show that the trucks are going to the market as we speak, and they're pretty good already and close to long haul ready. So we achieve a range of 300 kilometers per shift, which makes 600 per day. But then we create another problem. So by 2030, we are, by Ursula von der Leyen's commission, there's also a law out there that we need to basically achieve a carbon dioxide reduction by 40% by 2030. That means around 50% of the whole fleet in Europe needs to be carbon-free trucks. This is a good message. But that means also that we will produce at MAN only 100,000 battery packs, 650 kilos of precious metal. Is that intelligent? No. Does it really solve our problem? No, it creates further problems. And then we teamed up at that early times in COVID with Circular Republic, together also with BMW and a lot of startups, and said, okay, how can we tackle that problem? How can we solve it? In order not to, for the first installment, we need to get these resources, because that's obvious. But then we wanted to create the real circular economy, so that after 10 years lifetime of a truck, the batteries are coming back. And we endeavored certain things we can do. The first thing is when a battery out of a commercial vehicle operation comes back, it's still of use for other purposes, so as stationary batteries. So there are also a lot of startups taking care of that. And the second topic is then we set together with a lot of companies, so what are the methods how to really recycle it. So our intention by 2030 is to have basically 90% of the full mass of a battery recycled, and 95% of all precious metals. So that is then at the end, it doesn't create a second problem when we solve the first one, hopefully.
Exactly, because that is exactly what we need. We need to overcome the limited perspective of, for instance, in the context of electrification of transport, only looking into the lifetime, but looking into really the entire life cycle of a product or of a car, of a truck. Yeah, which starts, after all, with mining and hopefully ends with preserving the metals we have. Beyond batteries, there's of course other parts in such a truck, and that leads us, I think, to product design. What role does that play for you also, as you're the CTO and the head of research and development? How can you design a truck that is circular in the best sense of the word?
I mean, it all starts with the right education, and it all starts with the engineers working on it. I mean, if we don't think it, it will not be happening. Yeah, so you need a certain understanding, but what is also good that there's also an economics for recycling. Yeah, so it's also for a company some kind of logic. Yeah, for example, we have some for engines, for example, we do a lot of remanufacturing. So basically, we take the old engine out of service, then we remanufacture and we sell it again. Second topic is we thought about how to use, I mean, you see the outer parts of the truck. Meanwhile, we do all this recycled plastics. So it's 100% recycled plastics. We now get into the problem that step by step, everyone is doing that. There's not enough recycled plastics anymore. So I can everybody encourage to give it back and to the recyclers, like for example, your company, in order to fuel the system, because at some point of time, otherwise the prices will take too far off, and then we need to have different measures. And besides now the plastic parts and the battery I mentioned, we also now take care in the next generation of trucks, how do we do it in the interior? You can see in BMWs and on the automotives, it's already more advanced. Yeah? So we look for more natural materials than synthetic materials. We talk about beech and leathers and so forth, in order to reduce the amount of pollution you set into service with the truck.
Great. And the topic of materials, that leads us actually directly to what Barmer, for instance, is doing, and also what you, Michail, are doing. ExoMatter is, as I mentioned, leveraging AI to develop, amongst others, sustainable materials. OutNature, we're going to hear about you in a second, and the specific plant you're focusing on. Maybe, Barbie, you can simply explain to us what's behind your startup, your technology, and whom do you work with on what?
Yeah, sure. Also, thank you for having me here. What we saw is basically the two topics that you already mentioned. Out there are 10 to the power of 60 material combinations. So if you're thinking about plastic, if you're thinking about building materials, recycling, we don't know a lot of materials yet at the moment. And we saw that that is a huge possibility that we find better material for the specific use case. And better material in our case can be a sustainable material, but can be also material that is long-lasting or more energy efficient when you produce the material. So different properties. And what we are doing, we are simulating with AI and different methods the molecular structure of the material. And based on the properties that can be sustainability properties, for example, CO2 footprint, or cost or performance properties, so everything what a material needs to have in terms of chemical, physical, engineering properties, we can tell the customers for a different use case, if it comes to plastic or building materials, these are the 10 best material. In the molecular perspective, you can try this out. Maybe that works better than what you're using at the moment. And we see that there are, I mean, you can also see it later on the Circular Republic part, is that we are an enabler for different parts in the circular economy, or circular economy. So the first thing is very important to find better material. So material that fits perfectly for the use case, what you need to have. Then the second one is you need to find material that you can produce in an efficient way. Because when we are talking about recycling, very often now recycling is that solution for everything. And it is a very important part, but you need to take into account how much energy do we need to recycle plastic. How much energy or how much water resources do we need that we can generate this, and what will happen after the second or third use. So there's a lot of question more happening around here, what we see. And then next, what we can say is, okay, when you have the best material, then it should also be efficient and easy to handle. That means, where is the raw material come from? Can we have it here? Is there an alternative material or ingredient in this material that is maybe from Europe? And then as well, next to that, next to the synthesis route, also how can we bring it back again in the life cycle? And that's what we are trying to do with the digital way, with the AI. We have two use cases, what you mentioned. We are using plastic, or see what are the alternatives there for chemical industries. But we also have a customer, very interesting in the building material sector, a bigger German enterprise. They're looking for material that can capture CO2. That's not a new topic, but what's very important for them is that not after 5 years, the CO2 will go again in the atmosphere. So that it's really, really holding it in the material, and that's something what, for example, is a topic for ExoMatter.
Perfect, yeah, and a perfect example of, you briefly touched on it, what also we understand as an enabler for circularity, and that's where we come back to the slide that we briefly saw at the beginning. Maybe if we can have a look, talking to the tech colleagues. There we are. We clustered, and we published this earlier this year in March. We clustered a couple of hundreds, and here you only see 100 of them in a descriptive selection. Some 600 startups from all over Europe along different business model patterns. And that shows both for the world of startups, but also for the world of corporates, where the possibilities and opportunities also lie. And Barbara was talking about what they do. That's exactly what we understand as an enabler. We see it often, that technology, especially digital technologies, enable materials innovations, enable also marketplaces, for instance, or simply the transparency. The digital product passport topic is extremely important. So the data we need to enable circular products or business models, that's where ExoMatter is a great example, but we see also many other examples in other fields. If we go along the value chain, of course, it is about choosing the right materials or building a product that is fit for circularity. As said, maximizing the utility, extending the lifetime as long as you can, whilst not falling behind technological progress, obviously, and that is where sharing or product as a service or servitization in general can come into play. From a manufacturing company's perspective, much more important probably are those R strategies, one of which Frederik also mentioned, remanufacturing, refurbishment, which would then, after all, extend the lifetime of such a product and capture the value that was once already created when producing that product. And that is where every business model or every business man's or woman's ear actually has to ring, because capturing value, preserving value, that automatically means, if you do it right and efficiently, also a business case. And then at the end of life, of course, at some point there's resource recovery coming into play, and there we have both in terms of disassembly, separating material streams, and then also of recycling, extremely interesting startups. We were talking about battery recycling. There are two also really exciting German startups. One is called 2.0, here based in Munich. The other is called Scilab in Aachen. And Scilab just last week opened did the groundbreaking for a huge new facility that leverages hydrometallurgical battery recycling, gaining back vast parts of the lithium that is contained in such a battery, which previously simply wasn't possible with the old industry approaches we had been using before this whole ramp up due to electrification actually came into play.
Perhaps I'll save it until after our next guest panelist talks, but there's one thing that's really important in looking at this, graphic overall, is that what it's reflecting is that you can't think of designing materials in isolation. There's oftentimes an enormous desire within companies to simply swap materials. I'm going to take this plastic out and put this plastic in. If you don't actually design the entire chain and then think further, there's huge consequences of it. I can just give one with regards to lithium. So there's a study that's been done that, you can tell by my accent, I was born in the US. I'm based here now for years in Europe. But if the way Europeans currently design cities, in terms of being denser, being more bikeable, more enabling public transit, if the Americans design their cities just to the standard of an average European city, you would wind up saving close to 42% of the lithium needs that they would have. If you designed it in comparison to the best in class, a Vienna or something like that, where it's really a good urban design, 66% of our lithium needs going forward. So it matters a lot if you think of the entire ecosystem inside which this product, this service is going to exist. You have to think about the city, not just the EV, not just the battery.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe also OutNature is a good example of thinking the entire system or the entire value chain at least. I mentioned that you focus on that specific plant and it's called Silphy or Silphium. Michail, maybe can you tell us a bit what you do and what is behind all that? And I also have a picture which I'm going to show parallelly so we can get a glimpse into what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I would give you a short background why we're doing what we are doing. We're part of Schwarzkopf, well known for Lidl and Kaufland in Europe. Only in Germany, we're responsible for 10% of all packaging which goes into the market. And at one point we said, okay, we want to be only part of the problem, we want also to be a part of the solution. That's why we founded PreZero around 6 years ago, a waste management company. So we wanted to close the cycle. Actually, the cycle which you sort is actually our core mission, to close the cycle. So we collect, we sort, we recycle what we can, but what we not can, we have to bring to landfill. Yes, right now we have also landfills, but also waste to energy plants. The core problem is the cycle. If you cannot close it for completely. So we need something to drive the whole system. And that's where we thought what impact can we generate. And we looked into materials which packaging are mostly made of. And besides plastic, it's paper or fiber-based. And then we looked into how we could make it more sustainable, but at the same time bring it the same quality and also on the same price level. And that's what's actually the start of OutNature, was a corporate startup. And we also wanted to look on the whole system. So not only how to generate on a one stage a better product, which is more sustainable, but cannot be recycled, for example, and then go once again to waste to energy plants, and we want to close the cycle how it should be. And that's how we came up to the Silphium plant as a base raw material, which we started with. Silphium is actually from Northern America and used in Europe as an energy plant. But besides, it stores in the ground around 8 tons CO2 per year and hectare a year. And it also is a cup plant, so it looks a little bit like a small sunflower. But it's a very big plant. It grows 3.5 meters high and around 2 meters deep into the earth. We are highly interested in the cellulose, which is part of this plant. So we actually extract energy on one part, and the other part we extract the cellulose out of it to make fibers at first for paper mills, which we sell to this fiber and make a raw material like paper out of it and make packaging. And then goes back into the typical recycled paper cycle, which you also know from your own household.
Honestly, before meeting you, I had never heard of Silphium. I don't know who can relate. How did you come up with that whole idea?
It was not our own idea because there's a farmers community in southern Germany which experimented with silphium for last 12 years. They have also some patents in how to bring how to plant it the right way to make it more affordable for agriculture. And then we had also connections to a paper mill and some machinery company, and then it also went together, actually. We started as an investment company, and after 2 years, we understood we have to build up the knowledge in our own company and hired very good experts in basis, in physics, in chemicals, and build out. And right now, we are our own R&D company which develop, produce the fibers, and right now we're working on other fiber plants as well, for example, palude cultures which can be grown on peatlands, because it's also a big issue, but also a big opportunity for us to reduce the CO2 emission.
And if I imagine the process, this is how it grows. This is the powder, so to say, or the granulate you make from it. Turn it into paper, and from that the packaging solutions are.
Exactly. We combine it with a virgin pulp for wood pulp or with a recycled pulp. Our target is actually to substitute virgin pulp in order to reduce deforestation, because a big topic, and we have a lot of agricultural space which can be used much better from our point of view. For example, if he plants white, we can use straw to make a high quality fibers out of it, so we can utilize and cascading the whole each part of the plant, and also in a way make some fertilizers to close the loop, so that we do not damage the soil and the soil quality.
With regard to such bio-based materials, we do often see certain patterns of criticism out there, and sometimes rightly so, which refer to monoculture, to land use conflicts, because you could of course also grow food, to resource intensity with regard to land, to water, to fertilizers, as you mentioned, and sometimes also the lack of scalability. So to say we couldn't even grow as much even if we wanted to support the demand we have globally. How do you respond to such criticisms in the specific case of OutNature, but generally what challenges or trade-offs do you see out there also beyond your immediate use case?
We want to develop from a current state to a better state. Actually, if you look into agriculture, for example, in Germany, there are millions of hectares with maize. Maize, you need a lot of fertilizers and even more for pesticides, herbicides to grow maize. And for example, maize is also used right now heavily as energy plant. It's maybe one of core topics of criticism, why to plant and grow a plant which can be used only for energy. Silphy is a substitute for maize, for example, because it's much more sustainable. It's good for insects. It's good for the ground because it holds it generates humus, for example. On this part, on the second part, I think is the multi-use of something you grow. You do not, for example, if you produce only energy out of a plant, I think criticism has a place to be, from my point of view. If you produce on a way higher value products, I think in this case it changes. And from our point of view, we elevate the current system to a better state.
I guess that's the steps we need to take then, yeah. In any case, it's a stony path, so to say, going circular. Alexis, also with your broad experiences, as mentioned in those different industries, I guess you can agree that the transformation of businesses to circularity, of large and small, entails really profound changes in those organizations with regards to the way they manufacture their products and design them, but of course also with regards how their companies work, how their business models are built up. What are the major challenges you have seen so far, or you see out there right now in businesses transitioning from a linear model to circularity, and have you seen cases where companies successfully overcame those?
Sure. I'd maybe do first the challenge of data, and then the second is the challenge of an ecosystem around that can actually work with that topic. So first, in terms of data, people assume we know a lot more about the details of the products and the materials that we have than actually is standard in any company. So there's a process called life cycle analysis, where you can actually go look in and see what the impacts are on multiple fronts, water, carbon, et cetera, and actually know the true impacts of a product. I remember when I worked at Adidas, we would have a material called TPU. It was a kind of combined composite material. It was something that was used with a synthetic leather. It was called synthetic leather and TPU in our products. That didn't mean we knew what was in it until we actually built up the system to categorize all our materials, figure out what was inside, so we could even figure out what substitutes could be made, and also what things were actually more sustainable that didn't feel necessarily more sustainable. People, if you don't have that kind of data, there was a big rush at the beginning. Everybody wanted to move in the direction of more sustainable products, and so there was a great desire to move towards bamboo materials for sportswear. That being said, if you actually looked at the numbers, what looked and felt like a more green material was actually multiples of times worse than actually using, first of all, even virgin polyester, and then if you go try and recycle it into closed-loop polyester. So it really matters if you have the data so that you can know this. Then second, let's assume that you have the data, and there are initiatives going on in Europe around product passports and around how to build up these categorization systems so that companies don't have to be as big as Adidas to actually find that data out. Well, that being said, we created an entire one material strip. It was made out of a TPU that we knew what the properties were, and we wanted to take it back. This product, everybody liked it so much they didn't want to give us their shoes back. I mean, so first of all, we had a consumer problem that they didn't want to give the materials back, and then we wound up with a problem that we had to build out a specialized recycler of that material because there was none in Europe, nor could we find globally anybody who already knew how to recycle that material because nobody had thought of making shoes out of it before. And then beyond just having a recycler, you say, okay, well, how do you get it from the consumer to the recycler? All of a sudden we found, or I say we, it's been a couple years since it's been we, me at Adidas, but it was such a frustration to all of a sudden have to turn into a reverse logistics company. Because, I mean, Adidas isn't known for being a reverse logistics company. It's sports stars and fashion. So you had to all of a sudden build up ecosystem partners. Most of them who were reverse logistics companies were used to working from warehouses to a designated locale. That being said, we would have to figure out how to get we'd take back shoes in stores, try and get those to these warehouses back again, another reverse logistics that we would need to set up. Or we'd have our consumers sending them back in little packages. And when we looked at the entire life cycle of what we're doing, we found out that we're actually creating more harm than good. So I think you have to think, again, back to you have to think of the whole systems design of what you're building out, and don't just sort of skip steps and go straight from, okay, this material either feels it's more sustainable, I measured it is more sustainable, but then measure the entire life cycle of the chain that you're building up, and think about what's gonna happen when things go sideways, when your customers don't want to give you back the shoe, when they don't bring it back to the store. That really matters. Yeah,
setting or designing those systems and then setting them up, that's two challenges, I guess, even in one. And the part setting them up and also partly designing, that's exactly basically what we're doing also here with Circular Republic, what we've done in the battery space with with MAN, Webasto, BMW as manufacturers, with SAP for the data side, with Rubis as a further corporate, actually Europe's largest copper recycler, but they're now going also into hydrometallurgy, and then targeted startups along that value chain that really can speed up innovation tremendously. With one startup doing reverse logistics, for instance, because transporting a battery from A to B, an old one, is not so trivial. Transporting it across borders is not trivial. That's one of those startups to do that. Evolving from here, basically from a master's thesis in the first place at TUM to now actually operating, I don't know how many batteries a day all across Europe. And the next startup doing battery analytics and doing automated disassembly, changing the whole business case, because if you do that manually, of course you can compete with the classic recycling streams. But if you can automate in the same way that we have automated manufacturing previously for the past 150 years, we've been optimizing this world and sort of neglecting the other side of the metal, the later part of the life cycle. Suddenly you change the game, and then eventually you go into the recycling technologies that I mentioned earlier. Frederik and Barbara, any further challenges that you see, or also best practices how to overcome them, also from an organizational side or from a practical side, either at MAN or also at the companies, the big and small, that you work with at ExoMatter?
You can start.
Okay, I start. I mean, it starts with trying to think circular, but it's not always as easy. We are all under time pressure. The next launch of a product is waiting. The teams are under high pressure of delivery. So, but it starts then with leadership and your own personal decisions. I mean, we are all here in the room. We are decided at certain places where we make a big decision, and they influence the way we go from here to tomorrow. So it's a little bit of also how do you train yourself by at least getting insight into those conferences and learning about plans that you can use in your own business cases. Depends on how you teach your team, and also take your time and go out of your paths, which are normal for a company, because we are all a strong organization walking our path since a couple of years, 100 years or whatever. So take it with Schumpeter. You need to destroy the old in order to create the new. So stay curious. So these are some thoughts to it, how to make it happen.
Yeah, and then it's probably, I've heard it a couple of times from others, it's 10%, 22% technology, it's 80% change management after all. Because of course, you need the down-to-earth use cases, but you also need the top management commitment that you can refer to. Otherwise, it is so complex, it is often enough such a pain and needs so much stamina to actually implement it, that you need to rely on your organization actually having your back.
I'd like to substitute two words. It's not necessarily top management commitment, it's top management passion for the topic. At Adidas, when the big shift happened, it was because we had a specific leader who was known that he surfed, he went hiking, he talked about all the time, Eric Licky talked about all the time about our future was going to be, we were going to capture the market by actually working more sustainably. All of a sudden, the guy who led football wanted to create a more sustainable football shoe. And when I was sitting down with him and asking him, why are we, what's your motivation for doing this for the next World Cup? He said, because Eric likes it. But you better love it. If it's one of the 15 things, just as you were saying, if it's one of the 15 things on top management's priorities, it's the 15th. Because everybody, the day-to-day of what you always do was already there with 14 before the 15 came along. So they better have passion for it. Screw the commitment.
We'll be concluding in a second. I'll get back to you, Barbara, with the closing remark, because that's going to fit to the previous question anyways. But I have two last notes before we close, actually. And one is that, as most of you have, or some of you have, into DLD Circular, that is going to be taking place next year again, obviously in September. And another special invitation is Circular Republic Festival, taking place right in here, end of May, also with the extended DLD community, and I guess many familiar faces, but also many exciting people from all around the world. So if you are passionate for circular economy and want to implement that in your businesses, then that is, of course, I think the place to be. Apart from that, we are very happy also to work together, and in the best DLD spirit, I think we can all ask ourselves, you are all leaders in your respective domains and sectors. You can all ask yourselves what you can actually do to spark and drive the transformation to circularity. Sometimes it's simply knowing the right people and lighting up their passion for the topic maybe. And if there's anything we can do together, then of course we're very happy to get into talks. So closing this, I'd like to come back to the passion topic and the hope. Looking to the future, what gives you, each of you, the most hope for a successful transformation to a circular economy so that we can actually really sign or prove what we signed up for, also with this conference here, restoring and preserving ecosystems. What gives you hope that we will eventually go the right way?
Should I start? The 10 to the power of 60 number, because it's so much possibility out there, so many possibility in terms of materials that we can solve, and that makes me hopeful.
Fits to ExoMatter. Wow. Alexis.
I've had the good fortune of seeing this in 2 different industries. I got to be on the corporate side of working with all of these startups and scale-ups. And at the beginning of my career, back in 2004, when I was first starting in this topic, everybody was talking about how responsible this was and how good for the earth it was. And now what people are talking about is how much this has already hit market parity, that it is starting to get cheaper than the alternative, and how the proliferation of clean tech startups and clean tech VC has just boomed in the last year. And it is not something, everybody talks about VC, it's not just in Silicon Valley. In fact, there is a stronger deep tech and clean tech VC community here in Europe than has been in years, and sometimes ahead of even can outcompete the Silicon Valley folks.
Okay. My reflection, and I come back to the 2 speeches we heard this morning. I always thought, okay, you need a burning platform. I think we have it. And now everybody should have understood it. And also we need some guidance from the lawmakers, and we also have it. But still, I see that we are now in such kind of a transformation where we lose traction. I was just the other day in Brussels, and we see that, the election was not in favor of the Green Deal. We see in the European Parliament a lot of resistance. We see basically that we don't take it too serious. Does it really take care of my business today? We see that. So I think we can ask ourselves here. We have the awareness, we have also the passion. That's why we are sitting here. That we have the interest, but we need to go out there and try to avoid that this fire is turning down, and in the next decade, we lose the focus of this burning platform. So keep on pushing, please.
Yeah, and leaving the bubble. Maybe that is something that we all can take away also from today. Michail, last one.
I think we are already all part of a circular economy. It starts with each of one. If you're coming home to your household, if you separate the packaging you bought in the right way, you can also generate very small but extremely important impact. On the one side, maybe I would say lessons learned for the investors and startup founders. Listen from my side, current customer does not pay extra money for sustainability. So you have to develop products which can compete with what's already on the market. It's extremely important.
Yeah, and what gives me hope in that context is actually like this ecosystem where we're right here. You meet so many people. Helmut has been talking about that this morning. The passion you see in people, be it in corporates or in startups that we work with right now, and especially like, of course, the founders who trailblaze new possibilities with their solutions. That is really what keeps me motivated, because it does spark hope, because there's so much out there and so many things that we have accomplished also in this ecosystem that no one would have believed to ever become a reality before. That is something, that gives me hope, and hopefully all of us. Thank you so much for this session. We're going to have, I think, 15 minutes of coffee break before we continue with Eckhard von Hirschhausen and his closing remarks, and then the farewell with Steffi and the entire team. Thank you, all 4 of you, so much, and have a nice afternoon.